Hello, welcome to the West Side Podcast. This is where we'll post some of our audio from our sermons on Sunday, and we're so glad that you're here. Westside's vision is to reconcile people to God through the grace of Jesus step by step. We hope you enjoy, and thanks for tuning in.
Yes, it is my birthday. Thank you all. Yes, the topic of today's sermon is denial. No, they are not related. This is just where this one happened to fall today. We are talking about denial. So fun. Psalm 44, continuing in our Summer in the Psalms series. And so far this summer, we've been looking at these categories of our closely held worlds, the things that we hold dear to ourselves as our way of functioning from day to day. And then the way that the Psalms counter those tendencies, sometimes quite dramatically. They counter it. Because here's the thing, we love the Psalms so much because they resonate with us at this deep level. We love them for that reason, and yet we're also off-put by them. We are scandalized by them, and we don't know that many of the Psalms because we get into some of them and we read odd lines and we're like, I don't know what's going on there. But those lesser-known Psalms, which we've been really kind of looking at this summer, they make up the bulk of what's going on in the Psalter. Because the bulk of our lives are made up of not of these happy, clappy moments, but of the real stuff of life, frustration, despair, things of that nature. Just a quick recap. So far, we've looked at the closely held worlds of anxiety and scarcity. So we looked at the close relationship between those things. I'm afraid of running out. I'm afraid I'm not going to have enough, going to be enough, going to do enough. That's the scarcity mindset, and it's also the anxiety mindset. The two go hand in hand. Anxiety leads to scarcity. Scarcity leads to further anxiety. And when we let that take root, that quickly leads to a sense of greed. I'm not going to have enough, so I have to secure stuff for myself. If I'm going to be satisfied in this world, if I'm going to find any sort of happiness, if I'm going to find any measure of security, I got to go get stuff for myself. What does that lead to? It leads to greed. When anxiety and scarcity and then greed take root, last week we talked about self-sufficiency. We talked for a little bit, we considered the close relationship between greed's motto being, I need this to be happy, the close relationship between that and self-sufficiency saying, I don't need anybody to be happy. A close relationship between those two things. And now today we're looking at denial. When anxiety and greed and self-sufficiency take root, it's a sign that we've bought into the world's idea of happiness and safety and security. And we've all done this to some extent, and we all are kind of in and out of some measure of this on a day-to-day basis. This is not something that we check off a list, I figured that out once and I'm moving on. No, this is something for all of us all of the time. When we buy into what the world tells us will give us happiness and safety and security, what inevitably happens is, one, it works for a little bit and we think we're going to be fine. And then it spectacularly does not work. We find out, sometimes in some subtle ways and sometimes in some really not so subtle ways, some deep, dark moments, that it just absolutely does not work. And what Brueggemann does with this idea of denial, Walter Brueggemann, he's the one I'm kind of following for these categories. What he says about this idea of denial is, when the world's vision of happiness and safety and security has fallen apart, what then do I do? Well, one reaction that I think we find, if we're honest, we find cropping up in our own hearts is we have to sweep under the rug our experience, right? We have to start saying, oh, it's going to be fine. I put all my eggs in this basket of happiness. I totally leaned on this way into security. None of it's working, but I still have to function in my daily life. So I'm going to ignore the fact that what I've tried to do so far isn't working. I'm going to tell you that it's fine, and I'm going to keep doing this all by myself and sweep under the rug the nasty realities of my life, because I have to tell you that I'm doing well today. I got to get up on a Tuesday morning and go to work. So I must fall into this rather scary tendency of denial. If greed says, I don't need anything to be happy, I need this one thing to be happy, and that's deeply related to self-sufficiency, saying, I don't need anybody to be happy. There is a very close correlation between I'm going to do this on my own, I don't need anybody to be happy, and a life that quickly starts answering questions about how we're doing with just, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. Do you find that? I've put myself on this island. Everybody's failed me. I don't need anybody else. I got this. That works for a little bit, but then we find the trend where people ask us how we are doing. And it's fine. It's fine. That we hear denial and we think about the deep denial of God and all of that. We're not talking about that today. We're talking about a much more subtle version of denial that seeps its way into our lives. And the Psalms confront us with that denial and say, you don't have to live that way. You don't have to live that way. Anxiety is countered by the truth-filled, trust-filled fidelity, faithfulness to God and faithfulness of God. Greed is countered by the fact that God has made an abundant world that we can live and play in. Self-sufficiency is countered by our dependence upon God. And today we're going to look at how our denial of our circumstances and how we're actually doing is countered by what Brueggemann calls abrasive truth-telling. Abrasive truth-telling. We don't have to put on a face. We don't have to keep up appearances. We don't have to keep behaving like we believe that all of the stuff that we've put our trust in is working out. We don't have to. We don't have to. This truth-telling is, again, scandalous. Brueggemann says, this is one of the recurring and most surprising elements of the Psalms, one that confounds pious readers. I was just trying to wake up and have my nice little devotions this morning, and I ran into a psalm that is calling God out for being asleep. That doesn't fit in our normal category of trying to trust Jesus today, but that's what the Psalms are made of. And they're what our expressions of faith ought to be made of as well. The full truth must be told in order for our faith to be genuine. The full truth must be told. Truth-telling is indispensable for well-being. What we're talking about here with this truth-telling is this. It's lament. It's the genre, it's the category of Psalms called lament. And lament is beneficial for so many reasons, and the one we're looking at today is this. Lament is a refusal of denial. I will not let myself slip into an it's fine sort of life, because that's just skimming the surface. That is not the fullness of what God has made me for. Lament is a refusal of denial. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to read Psalm 44. I'll tell you up front, this is not a difficult passage to understand. It is a difficult passage to embody in our lives. It outlines neatly. It's pretty easy to understand, but if I'm going to let myself actually get to where I'm living this out, it requires some raw honesty that we're not always comfortable with. May the Lord be gracious to us as we read and try to become these kinds of people. Psalm 44, let's read it first. Starting in verse 1, we have heard it with our ears, O God. Our ancestors have told us what you did in their days and days long ago. With your hand you drove out the nations and planted our ancestors. You crushed the peoples and made our ancestors flourish. It was not by their sword that they won the land, nor did their arm bring them victory. It was your right hand, your arm, the light of your face, for you loved them. Verse 4, you are my king and my God, who decrees victories for Jacob. Through you we push back our enemies. Through your name we trample our foes. I put no trust in my bow. My sword does not bring me victory. But you give us victory over our enemies. You put our adversaries to shame. In God we make our boast all day long, and we praise your name forever. Verse 9, but now you have rejected and humbled us. You no longer go out with our armies. You made us retreat before the enemy, and our adversaries have plundered us. You gave us up to be devoured like sheep and have scattered us among nations. You sold your people for a pittance, gaining nothing from their sale. You have made us a reproach to our neighbors, their scorn and derision, the scorn and the derision of those around us. You have made us a byword among the nations. The people shake their heads at us. I live in disgrace all day long, and my face is covered with shame at the taunts of those who reproach and revile me because of the enemy who is bent on revenge. Now it's getting real. I realized as I copied these slides together that the passage 17 through 22 actually fell out of there. So I'm going to read them. They're not going to be up on the screen, but I promise they're there. I'm not making this up. If you're following along in your Bibles, then you know that. There's a reminder to bring your Bible to church. Verse 17. All this came upon us, though we had not forgotten you. We had not been false to your covenant. Our hearts had not turned back. Our feet had not strayed from your path. But you crushed us and made us a haunt for jackals. You covered us with deep darkness. If we had forgotten the name of our God or spread out our hands to a foreign god, would not God have discovered it, since he knows the secrets of the heart? Yet for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered as sheep to be slaughtered. Verse 23, awake, Lord. Why do you sleep? Rouse yourself. Do not reject us forever. Why do you hide your face and forget our misery and oppression? We are brought down to dust. Our bodies cling to the ground. Rise up and help us. Rescue us because of your unfailing love. Christian prayer and worship is often quite polite, agreeable, celebratory in nature. But our lives do not only consist of positive, happy things. Where's the breakdown? This is why many of the Psalms catch us off guard, because we're used to living a life in reality, but praying prayers and singing songs that fight against that maybe don't fully depict that reality. Sophie talked about this 2 weeks ago. The Psalms give voice to real life experiences, not some tidy expression of faith that maybe we think we're supposed to be offering God, or maybe somebody else has imposed that upon us and we're carrying that. It's not how the Psalms work. The Psalms are compelling for this very reason, but they also make us very uncomfortable. Am I allowed to not be okay? The Psalms answer a resounding yes. Am I allowed to express that to God? The Psalms say we already have. Use our words if you need to. Psalms can be a great source of comfort because they give voice to the things that we actually feel. We go, oh, someone else has already said this to God. I've been wanting to say that to God for a hot minute now. Someone else already has. Can we express it to God? Yes, someone already has. Let's use their words. This is what it is to lament well. And if it feels like this series this summer is talking more about lamenty stuff, it's because the Psalms themselves talk more about lamenty stuff. It's okay for the series to feel like that. You hear somewhere in the Psalms, you're like, oh, it's going to be fun. And it's like, well, I mean, yeah, it is, but it's also true to our lives. Here's the thing about denial that is so scary. When we let denial take root, we start to distance ourselves from reality. You can only say, I'm fine, or it's fine, so many times before a layer of hardness starts to build up on your heart. And we build up those layers of insulation to keep us from having to deal with reality, right? It's one of our coping mechanisms. It's one of our closely held worlds. But to detach ourselves from reality, to distance ourselves from reality through the tool of denial is to reject reality about others, to reject the reality and the truth about myself, and to reject the reality and the truth about God. This psalm is a perfect test case. It's a guide to truth-telling on all of those accounts. It's a little bit different than many lament psalms. There's a lot longer positive section up here at the very beginning of the psalm. 8 full verses that sound like this is going in the praise direction, and then it pivots very quickly. And as such, it's a helpful guide for us. So we're going to try to draw some application just from the structure, just from the outline itself of Psalm 44. Draw some application and get some guidance for our own truth-telling. First of all, verses 1 through 3. We've heard it with our ears, O God. Our ancestors have told us what you did for them, in long days ago. First 3 verses are this truth. I have seen you work on behalf of others. God, I have seen what you have done on others' behalf. I've heard it from their own testimony. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen what you have done for others. To hold on to that truth means not to downplay what God has done. One of the things about denial is we often don't just open the door to denial and walk straight in. Usually denial is a room way down a hallway, and we've had to open a whole lot of doors of downplaying this and that and the other to get there. Downplay this a couple times, downplay that a few times. I'm going to show us a handful of things in this psalm that we need to not downplay. The first one is this: don't downplay what God has done for others. Don't roll your eyes at what he has done for someone else. Don't let jealousy creep into your heart over what he has done for them that he hasn't done for you. Acknowledge it for what it is, see it for what it is, and let it be what it is. I've seen what you've done on behalf of others. Verses 4 through 8, I have seen the work that you've done on my behalf. It switches from we have heard it with our ears what you did for our ancestors to verse 4, you are my king and my God who decrees victories for Jacob. Verse 6, I put no trust in my bow. My sword does not bring me victory, but you give us victory over our enemies. All of a sudden, the story switches from I've seen what you've done for them to I've seen what you've done for me. I've seen what you've done for us. There's no denying it. I have seen you work on my behalf. And so the call to you and me, what do we not downplay? We don't downplay what God has done in our own lives. And it is so easy, Christian, over the long haul to have these moments of real encounter with God that happened maybe years ago or longer. It's easy if we aren't careful, if we don't use the lens of faith, to let some of those things, to let cultural commentary cloud those things, to let inner self-doubt cloud those things. Don't do it, saint. Don't downplay what God has done in your life before. It may not feel like it right now. You may not have that same sense of realness of who God is in your life right now, but don't downplay what he's done. Don't ignore the way that he arrested your life in that moment. Don't forget the encounters that you've had. Don't forget the experiences. It doesn't mean to go chase those experiences now. The only instruction from this text is don't downplay the real stuff that God has done in your life to this moment. Hold on to it with all of your being. Don't let someone else help you explain it away. You know what God has done. You know what God has said. Hold on to it with all of your might. Don't downplay what God's done for others. Don't downplay what God has done in your own life. And you hear this similar thread. If you go back and read through it, verse 3, it was not by their sword that they won the land. And then in verse 6, I don't put any trust in my own sword. Do you hear the parallel ideas? It's very clear. This is God who is coming through on their behalf, on my behalf. 8 full verses of like, hey, this is a nice little praise psalm. False. Not so much. Verse 9, but now. But now. And I think it's significant. One of the most basic principles of interpreting any text, but especially biblical text, is just look at how much room is given to stuff. Look at how much room occupies a given passage. First 8 verses, what God's done for them, what God has done for me. Next 8 verses, same amount of space. Next 8 verses total, God, you've abandoned me. I don't see it. You've hung me out to dry. As much space talking about how God has abandoned as he has spent saying how God has been good. The theme of these verses is, God, you're nowhere to be found right now. You have literally hung me out to dry. You sold me out is the language of the psalm. It's pretty intense. You sold me and you didn't even get anything out of it. What are you doing, God? Don't downplay the experience of God's absence. You just told me not to downplay what God has done in my life. Also that, yes. Don't ever let go of that. But learn, this is the abrasive truth-telling side of this. This is how we break out of lives of denial. It's by saying, God, I don't see it right now. I don't see you right now. I don't feel you in the way that I want to. It feels like you've left me here all alone. It feels like you've hung me out to dry. Saints, it's so important to name those moments for what they are and to not sweep them under the rug. When I say don't downplay the work that God has done in your life, it's thinking back to those moments that he has worked. But don't ever for a moment fake it in a given season where you don't feel like God is there. What we have to do in those moments is not deny how we're feeling, but bring it authentically and in a raw and honest way to God. Don't ever downplay the experience of God's absence. The Psalms are full of it. You've made us a reproach to our neighbors. You've made us a byword among the nations. I live in disgrace all day long. My face is covered with shame. People around me are taunting me, and I feel 0% help from you in this, God. This is Scripture, brothers and sisters. Be able to say it with the same veracity. Be able to say it with the same truth. Don't downplay the experience of God's absence. Verses 17 through 22. This is a really interesting passage. Some laments have this, some laments don't. This is one of the clearest sections where the psalmist tries to declare their own innocence. You'll see this in other psalms. Like, I've washed my hands. I think I'm clean of this situation. This is a pretty extended passage here where it's not even just in the singular, but it's in the plural. All this came upon us, though we had not forgotten you. The psalmist says, I don't know what I did or even what we did to make this happen. This reminds us to not downplay personal responsibility, because there are some moments where we feel the absence of God and God's not the one who moved, we were, right? There's some moments where we aren't feeling his presence so much and it's not a big mystery as to why. It's because we've deviated. It's because we've gone on a path of seeking our own pleasure in our own way. Sometimes that is the case. That's not what's happening in this passage. In this passage, they're saying, this isn't some claim that they had been perfect or anything like that. It's just a general, we stuck with the covenant, we signed the agreement, and we stayed with it, God. There's no clear evidence as to why you would be so far off right now. Why don't I experience you now? I find this so encouraging, because it means, while we ought to be having a daily, reflective experience of our faith and be it's the search me and know my anxious thoughts from Psalm 139. Search me and know my heart and see if there's any wicked way in me. That ought to be part of the fabric of our faith. Absolutely. We ought to be sensitive to the sin in our own lives. We ought to be increasingly sensitive to that. But we also ought to know that just because God feels absent in a moment doesn't mean that we've done something wrong. Because, in general, we do such a poor job of naming the absence of God, and we don't maybe see a whole lot of Christians around us doing it, what can easily happen is I find myself in a season of experiencing the absence of God. I don't hear anybody else talking about that. Surely I've done something wrong, right? That's the easy train of thought to follow, right? That is not it, brothers and sisters. When God is absent, it is not necessarily a clue that it's time for you to get in line. It's not necessarily a reminder that you've been doing something wrong. Sometimes this is just the way that life goes. Sometimes this is the way that our experience of God and faith goes. Don't carry around the shame of doing something wrong. Don't carry it in your bones. Don't carry it quietly on your own. Don't carry it in that way. Hold it with open hands and know that God's absence is not necessarily a reminder that you have done something out of pocket. And then, once you've told the truth about what God has done for others and what God has done for you and how you don't see God at all right now and how you're on a good level playing field with God, once you've told the truth about all those things, cry out to God. Call upon God to act. That's what these last 4 verses are all about. It's pretty startling. Awake, Lord, why do you sleep? God is sleeping on the job in this psalm. God has fallen asleep. This is Jesus asleep on the boat. God falls asleep. Why do you sleep? Rouse yourself. Don't reject us forever. Do something, dang it. Why do you hide your face and forget our misery and oppression? Do you not see what I'm going through over here right now, God? Do you not see it? Do you not care? What is going on? And here, this is a fascinating end to this psalm. We like to, I don't know about you, but it's easy to poach the Psalms and we read through them and we kind of skim over the parts that we feel uncomfortable about or don't really like. But usually you can get to the end and it's oh, praise God and everything will be good. And you're oh, well, at least I can feel good about that going into my day. At least I can pray those last couple of verses, right? Am I the only one who reads Psalms like that? It's easy to do, right? This Psalm doesn't end like that. It ends with a sure note of something that is good and true. But it doesn't end with some, again, happy clappy ending. We are brought down to the dust. Our bodies cling to the ground. Are things going well? No, things have not recovered in this psalm. Rise up and help us. Rescue us. The plea goes to the very last line of the psalm. But then, here's the gospel moment in this psalm. We can call out to God to wake up on our behalf. And yet, at the very same time, never forget the steadfast love of God. The very last word of this psalm is chesed. Your steadfast love. The thing that was easier to see in verses 1 through 3 when I was thinking about how you came through for my friends. And the thing that was easier to see in verses 4 through 8 when I was thinking about how you've come through for me. Is the very thing that I questioned outright in the next 8 verses because I wasn't experiencing it at all. But the person who can take that reality and then turn it into not a, I'm going to ignore you, God, I'm going to go do my own thing, but then turn it into a plea towards God. That is the person who has been so marked by, so convinced by the steadfast love of God. As long as we let that be our anchor, we know that any experience of the absence of God must in some way be rendered in a different way. And we can say something about that. Show up! You can't keep doing it like this. We can't keep going on like this. We cannot keep doing this. The psalmist can say that because they know of the steadfast, the never-ending, the never-giving-up love of God. The irrational, not ever going to quit on us love of God. He's like, I know you're still there, even though I don't feel you right now. I know you're still there. And so I'm going to call upon you. Rescue us because of your unfailing love. I love that is the final word of this psalm, this scandalizing psalm. Like I said, this is not a difficult passage to understand. The difficulty lies in putting it into practice in our own lives. And so I want to close with a few reflection questions that are really just going to go back through some of the structure. But first reflection question is this: can you identify it? Where are you falling into denial? And if that is too esoteric of a question, that's too weird of a question for you, where are you falling into a "it's fine" approach to life? Do you hear yourself? You're going to catch yourself the next time you say it. When somebody asks, you're going to hear it and you go, uh-oh. Yeah, you're welcome. Where do you see yourself falling into it? It's fine. Has it crept in? Have the ways of the world failed you? And how are you responding? It's fine? Or I'm going to lean in dependence upon God. I'm going to tell God the truth about how this is going. Next, what in your life do you need to put through the truth-telling filter of Psalm 44? I think this psalm lays out for us a really helpful. There are no 3-step guides to any measure of maturity in the faith. There just aren't. But we do, on occasion, find passages that lay out for us a helpful model for how we ought to be engaging. Where have I tried, maybe intentionally, maybe not intentionally, to downplay what God has done in others' life? Have I been wanting something that I've seen someone else get that has been really hard for me? Maybe that's another way of asking. Where have I tried to downplay what God has done for others? Where have I downplayed what God has done for me? Have I bought into some cultural narrative about some experience that I had back in the day when I know deep down that God actually got to my heart and changed my life in that moment? Are we downplaying our experience of God's absence? I don't hear somebody else talking about it, so it must not be true or good for me to be experiencing it. Folks, it's normal. Let me just say, it's normal. It's part of the life of faith to experience the absence of God. It's not final, it's not absolute, but it is normal. You don't have to downplay it. The people around you have experienced it. They have. They've walked through it. It's okay for you to walk through it too. Say it out loud and don't "it's fine" it away. Don't deny it. Don't downplay personal responsibility. If you feel far from God and you know that you're the one who moved, then move back. Don't downplay that. But also acknowledge the moments in which you truly don't know. Search me and know me, Lord. I can't tell of anything. Say that honestly to God. That's okay. We have this weird worm theology where we're so woe is me all the time that we just assume we screwed something up. That's not always it, saints. It's not always it. And then, having told the full truth, call upon God to act. And as you do, don't ever forget the steadfast love of God. The truest thing about you today is that you are loved deeply by the God of the universe. He created you. He made you in his image. He loves you more than you could possibly know. And there's nothing that you can do today that gets you outside of that equation, that gets you outside of that program. His love is going to be there for you tomorrow, whether you feel it or not. It is. Don't ever stop holding on to that. Don't ever let it go.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and we hope the sermon inspired you in one way or another. If you'd like to stay connected with us, feel free to hit the Contact Us button on our website. Let us know who you are and send us any questions or prayer requests you may have. Or visit us in person at Prairie Mountain School in Eugene, Oregon at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram to stay updated on all things Westside. We'll see you next time.